to me, the core reason to upgrade has always been, now I'm bored of this thing.
Okay. So tell which
So
one was
functionally, for example, I honestly do not care. Like if I were to rewind back and let's assume that all the 10 machines I've owned so far were all still in my garage, I would still ride all 10 of them. So I'm not the guy who upgrades because I think, okay, I'm done with 25 bhp, can I get 40? There is a reason to upgrade to 40 for sure. But I am the person who says, I'm not learning as much from this machine anymore. So is it so important to me emotionally that this machine needs to stay in my garage? If yes, then I am not upgrading, I am adding a machine. And if it's not important, then it moves on. To give you an example, I knew the KTM 200 Duke when I bought it was a step. And I knew the actual machine I wanted to buy was a 390 Duke. I just didn't want to wait a year for that to happen. And I had collected the money for it, so I wasn't concerned about it. So as soon as the 390 upgrade happened, the 200 was immediately said, ye to bikega. There is no way this remains, right? When I bought the 1200 Multistrada, my first feelings as I started to ride that motorcycle was, this is a keeper and I will not move on from this bike. I will add things to this garage.
Right.
Turns out that also faded. And I put 55,000 kilometers to the point where I said, now I understand this motorcycle fully. I have to move on from here. This cannot, I mean, I was 44, 45. I said at 45, I cannot hit the marker where I'm saying this
Is done.
160 bhp bike is the end all and be all, and I will never move on from this. I'm not rich enough to do that. If I was rich enough, honestly, the 1200 would probably still be there. And then I would have added the V4 on top, right? So I had to move on. But to me, it is always about, what am I learning? How bored am I getting? And the question that I always have to answer is, do I want to keep this or do I want to move on? And as time passes, I want to find machines I want to keep a lot more than machines I want to move on from.
Right. So, okay. This is very similar in the vein of when we spoke about new cars, new bikes. There's the emotional side of it, there's the logical side of it. And I think what you are saying is something that I am in the same boat, but I don't have the freedom to exercise. But if you have chosen well, right, then the chances are the need or the desire to upgrade is not going to come very soon.
Correct.
Right? You will have something that will keep you emotionally engrossed, right?
Yes.
It will be teaching you lots of things. You'll be doing more with it. And so therefore, you will spend a lot more time with it before you get to a point where you say that, now I need something else.
Yeah, and before you romanticize it too much, I also want to point out that there is a learning process in finding your method to finding those machines.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen automatically, and no matter how much YouTube you watch, no matter how much advice you take from us, it doesn't happen until you figure out what your preferences are, right? So I've bought a lot of machines that made no sense for my garage along the way to discover what made sense for my garage. And today, and I'm saying 2014 is when I became clear enough about, I want this kind of machine, I don't want this kind of machine. It became clear to me in 2014. I've been riding since 1999, let's call it, 1998 or 99, right? So it took me 15 years to figure out what kind of machines I would probably end up keeping versus the machines that I would move on from. So a lot of you are much younger than this, and your careers are much shorter than this at this point of time. You won't find this ability to zoom in on, this is the kind of machine I want to have, that easily. You are going to make mistakes, and that's okay. And when you make a mistake, upgrade. It doesn't have to be the night you realize it's a mistake. It can take time. It's okay. What about you? What are you thinking?
Man, I'm just thinking that except for the Sunny, which was not a choice really, every other machine, somehow I was fortunate enough. Like, so I didn't buy as many vehicles as you did, right? I went through different, like after the CBZ, I had a friend's KB, then I had the Dio, and then I got the Impulse and the Dukes, and then in cars we had the Nano, then we had the Ignis and the 124, right? Now all of them somehow, like for me, they hit that one thing that I wanted, right? There's that sense of, okay, the Nano, as ridiculous as it sounds, there's a sense of versatility to it, right? Which for me just clicked. I loved that aspect about it, and that's the one thing that I enjoyed with all of them. Like even the Dio, you think of it like, I love scooters, and like with the Dio, there was that fun factor to it, right? Just because of the way it looked, right? It had that personality about it. So somehow that has clicked for me. And even the Busa, right? Like I don't know why Busa is also like, I know it's thought of as a very unidimensional
No, it's not.
machine, right?
It's not. It's an extremely versatile superbike.
Exactly. So I think finding what works for you, because like he and I are completely different in terms of the kind of machines we like, right? We understand and appreciate them well enough, and we'll find that. But what excites him versus what excites me is completely different. So figuring that out is an important part.
No, and there is a very key point to be made here, okay? At the beginning of your riding career, driving career, you'll pick versatile things. It's natural. And you'll always be slightly logical about it because you'll say, it's got enough space, it's got enough comfort, it's got enough ability, it's got enough performance or whatever. And you'll find a blend. I think that as you evolve as a rider, as a driver, your need to be versatile starts to narrow. And you don't need it so much. And there is a very fundamental, I think, way of thinking that changes. Kartik still likes versatile machines. But remember, he's honestly saying that he has a restriction, that he cannot buy too many of them. I'm on the other side. I spend most of my money buying motorcycles or doing something motorcycling anyway. I don't really have a life outside of this, right? But that allows me the latitude to say, I like sports bikes. So I need a sports bike. But I don't want the sports bike to become comfortable because that will compromise the sport bikiness of it. And I want it for that focus. Yeah. Because I can afford to say, if my sport bike is very expensive, then I can have a cheap ADV, but a good ADV. I don't need both of them to be expensive. But an ADV needs to be a very good ADV, and it doesn't have to be a sports bikey thing at all. And if I want a commuter, then a commuter has to be sporty because I like sporty, but it doesn't have to approach a sport bike. But I can then say I have specialist jobs in my garage that a different machine will do. Remember, these are two mindsets. This is not a matter of acquisition. This is a matter of mindset. Kartik says, I bought the Hayabusa because I can go to the racetrack with it, have a gala time. I can go to the racetrack on the Busa. It's a great tourer. And it's one of the most docile, calm, sweet motorcycles. So if you have to commute tomorrow on it, in Mumbai traffic or Pune traffic, it won't be that much of a hassle.
Which I have done.
Correct. So it does a large number of jobs. So I have moved on to a state of mind where I'm saying, my sports bike will also commute. And I accept the suffering that comes with that. But I'm on a sports bike, I'm enjoying the experience, including the suffering of it. I will commute on my multistrada. And that means parking in random places is really challenging. And it's a big motorcycle. And sometimes when you're in a very tight spot, you have to make a tight turn or something, it can have its challenges. I'm saying I'm enjoying that as much as the rest of the experience too. So there are two mindsets in play here. And it's very important, I think, that we figure out who we are when we are going for upgrade, because every time you have that opportunity.
I actually am coming down to the point where I think that it's the same mindset, because see, you've chosen a compromise. You've gone the other way. You said, I'll have a sports bike and I'll learn to live with it on the street. Right? I'm saying I'm going to tax myself with the challenge of having to deal with that big and heavy motorcycle on the track.
Correct.
You have to choose which are the compromises you're willing to live with every day.
Correct.
And what in return you'll get on those special moments.
Correct.
Right?
And I think the difference is, my mindset says, if it's very good at being the specialist, I live with all of the compromises and it's fine. And I think Kartik prefers slightly more generalist machines where it doesn't have to do that one job outrageously well, but it has to do a number of jobs really well. This is also true for cars. This is also true for motorcycles, because motorcycles, especially in the slightly higher reaches, are a little bit more leisure oriented. This becomes a much finer point. Cars remain utility oriented. So this is a more diffuse thing, but it's there. How would you approach the same discussion with cars?
In terms of upgrades?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the conversation for me is the same. You have to be able to find a car that first works for you. If you have that, right, the need to upgrade then is largely an emotional one, right? So I think we'll close the first chapter here in terms of this idea. It's clearly first try and find the right vehicle for you, which is what we discussed about. First car, first bike, whatever it is.
And it's not a spec thing.
Huh?
And it's not a specification thing.
It's definitely not a specification thing. It will be the connection that you find.
I would to say, don't even start it at the budget thing. Start it at what do I really want. Okay. And if the answer is as ridiculous as a Porsche GT2 RS, fine. Can you afford the GT2 RS? No. And that's fine. At least it clarifies the idea of what kind of vehicle you'd like to upgrade to.
Right.
And then you can scale it back down to what is the closest that I can come to it given my situation today, given my budget today, etc., etc. Right? But if you can go to the dream scenario and clarify the idea of what you would buy, I think it informs the rest of the decision making and the path to that dream a lot better and a lot earlier. Consider this your invitation to like, share, and subscribe. Try the main MotorInc channel too. Lots more content there just for you.